Afternoon, members. We have apologies from Andy Allen and David McIlveen. Any others to be noted?
Alex Maskin.
Alex Maskin, thank you very much. And we welcome Ashley, who's standing in for Karen, who is absent today. So, members, page 39 of your main pack. Correspondence from the Chair of the Westminster Public Administration and Constitutional Affairs Select Committee, indicating that committee is undertaking an inquiry into the future of the United Kingdom. They have terms of reference, and they're in your pack on page 40. I have been invited to meet with the Chair and other committee chairs involved in scrutinising constitutional affairs and intergovernmental relations in the 4 UK legislatures. First of all, any comments on that piece of work, members?
Interesting.
And the question is, are you content I attend a meeting with the relevant committee chairs from the other bodies?
Agreed.
Thank you. Members, I'm not going to make a big thing of this, but just to kind of mark your card, I suppose. Last week, mention was made of the Assembly Business Trust. Mention also the Office of the Northern Ireland Executive in Brussels. And some opinions expressed have been noted and will be subject to challenge. So it's just to say we will be getting some correspondence and we will need to return to that issue. Hopefully with the right members at the table. In terms of invitations, the current list is at page 43. In the absence of comment on that, we move on to the draft minutes. This week they're in table papers, members, beginning at page 12, and they include an additional paragraph which was inadvertently omitted from the draft minutes in the main pack, and that has helpfully been highlighted in red. It's on page 13 of your tabled papers. And the question is, are members content to agree the draft minutes of our meeting of the 4th of November with this amendment? Thank you. Outstanding correspondence begins at page 53 of your pack. You'll see the final item on our list of outstanding correspondence is the letter to the First Minister and Deputy First Minister requesting information in terms of those scoping exercises and the options being considered in respect of victims of abuse falling outside the remit of the current HIA inquiry. We also requested officials are made available to brief the committee at the earliest opportunity. We asked for a response by the 6th of this month, and here on the 11th we are yet to receive same. So, having sought advice, you'll know the letter also reminded OFMdFM of our power under section 44, and that we might consider using that power in the absence of a satisfactory response from the department. So, the next step for us is to issue a further letter advising the committee may indeed exercise its powers to compel the attendance of people and the production of documents by a specified date. I'll open for comment. Paul, yeah.
Can I ask, can you use that power to ask for a group of correspondence or just one particular correspondence?
The legal advice we took was that you have to have a very good kind of reason and an evidence base and a paper trail to ask, and that is why we looked at the HIA, because there's a very solid paper trail going back over, is it a couple of years?
2013, yeah.
2013. So if you're saying, Paul, can we ask for HIA papers plus other subject matters, I think probably not, but we would have to look at the specific and see whether we had the same kind of evidence on the paper trail. But I mean, if there's a specific, we can certainly look at that if you're wishing to propose.
No, it's just when you look at the level of outstanding.
Yes.
It's absolutely terrible. It's just total bad form, and it's this committee isn't, this department isn't the only one.
No.
Most of them is like this when you look through your committees. and it's just terrible bad form, and it needs to change.
Well, in fairness, just so you know what was happening before you joined us, we did make a bit of a issue of it. I had informal meetings with OFMdFM, head of the civil service. We ended up actually calling the head of the civil service to committee, and for a short period there was a bit of an effort by the department to clear out the worst of the outstandings, but we have, as you have identified, slipped back.
Sure, you've indicated that we hope to hear from FM and DFM shortly. Is it not something can be raised again with them after this? We really don't want to have to go down, the avenue that we've...
And I think at this time, again, with the talks reportedly at such an advanced stage, maybe we need to demonstrate a bit of generosity on
They've
this.
been very charitable.
in the hope that we'll get a response.
Maybe only for a week.
I think that's a fair comment, Chair. I think very short-term amount of flexibility, given the critical nature, of the context. But I think we're progressing it correctly, and I think we can move to the next stage if
Of this specific?
of this specific one, if we don't get correspond. I think we should make it maybe a weekly or a bi-weekly item that we raise to kind of ensure that we don't lose track of it any further, though.
So I think we've got two issues here. One is that we are currently going to offer a bit of flexibility on outstanding issues, but we are going to return to it soon, and we do not accept this level of engagement. And the other one is the specific. Do we go to the next step, because we effectively had pre-agreed that we would do that? So the question is, are members content to issue a further letter to the First Minister and Deputy First Minister in which we advise them that we may exercise our powers under Section 44 if we do not receive a satisfactory response, and the suggested timeline is noon on Friday the 20th, which is Friday week? Are we content?
Can I ask, do you remember the quite curt response we got back the day that officials just didn't show up and didn't, their absence? Have we ever gotten any more further explanation for it? I mean, we all know obviously why, but it hasn't been acknowledged.
No, I think would I be right in saying that
It's on the outstanding correspondence.
it is on the outstanding correspondence list, but I think I think, Megan, we're kind of relatively sympathetic to officials in that there's only so much they can do without ministerial clearance. So are we content? Noon on Friday week the 20th will be the deadline in this next letter. All content? Okay, thank you. Members, correspondence summary sheet at page 58. Details correspondence received since we last met. I don't think there's anything that we particularly want to bring to your attention, but I'll pause if there are any matters arising that members want to raise. If not, we go to the draft forward work programme, page 85. The correspondence from the Northern Ireland Assembly EU Affairs Manager regarding a Council of the European Union Directive on Equal Treatment. I'm wondering, members, whether we wish to request a briefing on that from officials and possibly also the Equality Commission. Any appetite to investigate this EU directive?
Yeah, Chair, you proposing we get a bit of response to it from the Equality Commission? Is that what you're saying there? Yeah.
I was saying, on the one hand, departmental officials to give us their take on it, and also the Equality Commission.
That sounds sensible. Yeah.
It seems the two houses of Parliament are kind of reserving their position on this, aren't they?
They've reserved it, yes. Yeah.
So we're not going to get any guidance from that quarter at the moment. So content, members, yeah? Okay, thank you. Also, staff have been advised informally by colleagues from the Committee for Finance and Personnel that a monitoring round was commissioned by DFP on the 27th of October last, and returns were due back on the 3rd of this month. So, do you wish to request a briefing from our officials, our departmental officials, on the OFMdFM input to November monitoring?
Yes.
Yes, okay. And the draft forward work programme, members, is on page 92. So are you content with the proposed forward work programme, including the additions we have just agreed? Yep. Okay. One briefing for us today. On the 23rd of September, we noted the first report on the good relations indicators had been published. And we agreed that we would request a briefing from officials, and that's what is about to happen. So, in your packs, the clerk's brief is at page 95. The first report on the good relations indicators is at page 97. And finally, correspondence from the department on the recent good relations conference, which was for district council good relations officers, is at page 132. So, we welcome Donna Blaney, Pauline Donnan and Gráinne Killen. And Gráinne, it's over to you for opening remarks, yes?
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, for the invitation to appear here today to brief the committee on the 2015 Good Relations Indicators. There was a commitment in Together Building a United Community to review the Good Relations Indicators. The review is led by statisticians in OFMdFM, and following consultation in 2014, the Ministers approved the final set of indicators on the 22nd of April 2015. The first report on the revised indicators was published on the 22nd of September 2015 on OFMdFM's website. This report contains the most recent statistics on each indicator with historic data where available. The indicators provide evidence of and facilitate monitoring of good relations in Northern Ireland over time. The indicators present a range of statistics relating to community relations, including numbers of hate crimes, attitudinal data on Protestant Catholic relations, and attitudes towards mixing in schools, neighbourhoods and the workplace. In addition to the main report, there is additional data for each indicator, comprising breakdowns by gender and religion, as well as metadata available on the OFMdFM website. Sure, we are happy to take any questions you may have on the report.
Okay. What's your overall assessment?
I think at the moment, the Together Building United Community Strategy was published in 2013. Most of the data contained within the Good Relations Indicator Report is from either 2014 or 2014-15, the financial year. So it's a bit early to say what difference Together Building United Community has made, but we do get an idea of the current picture in terms of good relations in Ireland, and also for some of the we did have access to historical data, so we have an idea of what has gone on really before Together Building United Community. I mean, if you like, I can run through just a bit of a summary of the indicators, if that's
please. Will that give us an idea of the direction of travel as to whether?
In some cases,
Okay.
as I said, and for some of the indicators, it's the first time we've been able to collect the data, so we don't really know what went before. But for others, we sort of have an idea of what direction it was going in, whether it's going in a positive direction or a negative direction. If you're happy, I'll
Please.
go ahead. Okay, so I'll just go through each priority. I'll try and keep this as short as possible. So for promise, our children and young people, this is about trying to achieve two specific outcomes: improving attitudes between young people from different backgrounds, and also engaging young people in bringing the community together. So the indicators for this show a bit of a mixed picture. Young people's views towards the other community are improving over time, but they're not as positive as those of adults, a gap of about 30 percentage points. And views towards minority ethnic people aren't as good as for Protestants or Catholics, but they have been improving over the last few years. Less than half of young people are optimistic about relationships improving between Protestants and Catholics. And that's not about their relationships, it's just relationships in general about Catholics living here. But that's just the same as adults as well, so there's no real difference there. However, increased contact has been shown in the past through research to improve relationships and attitudes. And in terms of engaging with the other community, the proportion of young people playing sport or socialising with people from a different community is relatively high, and it is increasing. It's currently about 2/3 are doing that. And the majority of people think that sharing projects in schools is a good idea. So there are some positive signs there that they're starting to engage, and that hopefully will lead to improved attitudes. So under the next key priority then, our shared community. What we're trying to achieve there is an increased use of shared spaces and services, and that shared space is accessible to all. So the indicators here are a fairly positive picture. In terms of sharing in local areas, 2/3 of people think Protestants and Catholics don't tend to go to different services, and the vast majority think that leisure centres, parks, libraries, etc. are shared and open to both communities. But we don't have any historic data for that, so I'm not sure what direction that's going in. Figures from the 2001 and 2011 census of population show that levels of segregation in small areas have decreased over time. However, while 70% of people report that they would prefer to live in a mixed religion neighbourhood, support for this has dropped by 13 percentage points since 2010. And similarly, support for shared workplaces is high, but again has dropped since 2010. I'll just say a little bit about shared education under this priority as well. In terms of shared education, 6 out of 10 parents would prefer to send their children to a mixed religion school, but this is a slight drop from 70% in 2010. Levels of sharing do appear to be high. More than 3/4 of schools were involved in sharing education in 2013 or did projects with another school. The proportion of pupils attending integrated schools remains low at approximately 7% for primary and post-primary, but this is probably because the number of places remains relatively low. So under safe community, we're trying to achieve 2 outcomes here: a reduction in hate crime and intimidation, and also to achieve a community where places and spaces are safe for all. So in relation to the first, sectarian hate crimes have been decreasing since recording began in 2005, but there was a slight increase. Well, there was an increase of 18% between 2011 and 2014, but it's still below the levels of 2005. Racial crimes are now at a similar level to those of sectarian crimes, and they've doubled between 2011 and 2014. But the caveat with this is that this could be due to our improvements in actual recording and the willingness of people to go forward and actually report their crime. But I'd just like to point out that, relative to other crimes here, the rate of hate crimes is small. There's only about 0.5 per 1,000 population, and when you compare that to violent crimes, which is about 19 per 1,000 population, or domestic abuse, which is 7 per 1,000, it's still relatively low. And on a positive note, there are signs that people are starting to feel safe in venues that would traditionally be associated with a different religious background. So, for example, half of Protestants would feel safe going to an event in a GAA club, and half of Catholics would feel safe in an Orange Hall, and higher proportions feel safe about going to a venue in a Catholic or a Protestant school. So the last one then, our cultural expression, focuses on 2 outcomes. That there's an increased sense of community belonging and that cultural diversity is celebrated. And generally this shows a positive picture. The vast majority of adults feel a sense of belonging in their neighbourhood, and to a lesser extent they feel a sense of belonging in Northern Ireland as a whole. But young people are less likely to feel the same sense of belonging. Less than 1/3 of adults feel they have any influence over the local decisions made in their neighbourhood. and just over a quarter feel they have an influence in the decisions made in Northern Ireland. Again, the proportion of young people feeling they have an influence is lower than this again. So in relation to cultural diversity, 3/4 of people believe the culture and traditions of the Catholic community add to the richness and diversity of Northern Ireland society. And a similar proportion believe that about the Protestant culture and traditions. But a smaller proportion, only just under 60%, believe that about minority ethnic people. And finally, almost 3/4 of Catholics and 61% of Protestants think their cultural identity is respected by society. So I hope that was helpful and gave you a bit of a flavour as to what the indicators are telling us.
Thank you very much. Can I ask on page 4 of your report, which is our page 100 in the PAC members, you've got this kind of 20-year timeline. And it's a percentage who think relations between Protestant and Catholics are better than they were in previous years. It's just your choice of the landmarks: ceasefire, Good Friday Agreement, Holy Cross dispute, 2007 devolution, and then the flag protest. What made you choose those specifically?
Well, this graph actually came from a research report that we commissioned a couple of years ago, and it was looking back over the last 20 years. It was a long-term view of community relations in Northern Ireland, and this was a graph that they had included within the report, and they had identified that these were really the key events that led to changes in attitudes within Northern Ireland. So that was really the reason behind that. It wasn't a choice that we made ourselves.
So the researchers had identified that the public considered these to be key events?
No, they had...
They decided?
Yep, they had decided based on the attitudes. Well, I guess as well, they wanted to just show, well, here were the key events, to see if there were any changes in attitudes associated with those. But like anything, you could probably include all sorts of events within this.
I suppose just looking at, reading from left to right, the first landmark was the ceasefires in 1994. I suppose maybe it's just the way my brain works, but I'm dead looking for the Oma bomb to see what impact that may have had.
Yeah.
But, okay. To go back then through them, children and young people. Did I hear you right? You're basically saying that their attitudes are perhaps hardening more than adults.
They have been less favourable in terms of how they feel about Catholics and Protestants.
And is there any explanation? Is there any narrative coming through from this, or is that the next phase of your work?
No, we don't have any narrative at this stage, but the Young Life and Time survey, which is where this information comes from, they have been looking at this information in the past, and I think there's a general feeling that young people, it's that they're more disinterested in problems between Protestants and Catholics. It's not as real to them. So I just wonder if it's because it's not such a big issue that they don't put as much weight on it.
And yet their attitude to minority ethnic groups is troubling.
Yeah, but it is improving. It is improving over the years, so it is slightly less, but it is improving. And I have no explanation for that, I'm afraid.
Okay. Not pressing that then. Then again, I mean, the shared community, 70% would prefer to live in a mixed religious neighbourhood, but that's down 13 points.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's just been gradually decreasing over that time period. So I think it's just something to bear in mind. I mean, with a lot of these, we have wondered if the trouble over and riots over flag protests have had an influence on people's attitudes, but it's hard to say specifically what the...
Would it not be something the department would need to find out?
Yeah, I mean, this is something that we can look into in more depth, and I think that's what we want to do, take these, speak to other departments or key stakeholders and find out the reason why some of these indicators are telling us what they are.
I mean, the raw data then would it not suggest that TBUC is a bigger sell than you might have thought 2 years ago?
Yeah, in terms of being able to address some of these issues. Yeah.
And just the one you said, almost 2/3 of people think Protestants and Catholics don't tend to go to different local shops or GP facilities.
Mm-hmm.
You're making a distinction between perception and reality, yeah?
Yeah.
So do you have the reality there?
No, I'm afraid we don't have that information. This information is from the attitudinal survey, the Northern Ireland Life and Times, so it's really people living here, what their views are in terms of their perceptions of who is using different shops and services.
Yeah, I'm just wondering overall how useful this collation, which is what it is really, how useful it is. You know, because the next thing I might bring up would be racial crimes have doubled, but as you say, does that mean the actual incidences have doubled or the reporting has doubled?
And I think that, I mean, the indicators really are indications of where the direction of travel is and what the position is, and it's really taking this and then finding out and exploring, you know, what are the reasons behind it, by speaking to people who might be able to provide us with more of an insight into that.
So you've had all this for what, a good couple of months, or you've had it on the website for a couple of months?
It was published on the 22nd of September.
So is there a settled opinion in the department about what you do with this data and how you analyse it? And
No, I think we're still currently considering, you know, how we will drill down, you know, beyond these headline figures. That, and as you say, there is a need, you know, to dig deeper into this to see. This is giving you what people's perceptions are, but I think we need to get a little deeper into it to see why people have those perceptions, and that is a piece of work that we will certainly be taking forward.
And it potentially has very serious implications, I assume, for the likes of TBUC.
Well, certainly we would want to. I mean, this as you've said, is baseline information, which we will then use in the future to measure how effective TBUC is. But obviously, as we dig down into the figures and we find beyond the headline what the reasons are for it, and to that, yes, I would like to think that would inform the actions that we would take in the future.
Okay.
TBUC.
Yep. Megan Fair.
Yeah, just reading the report, it's interesting to know, is there a breakdown of data between rural and urban communities? Because I sometimes think people think that there's no issues in rural communities, but I think it's just that problems and indeed good examples of relations manifest themselves in different ways.
Yeah, we haven't included it in this report. That was because in the long view of community relations research that I mentioned in relation to the graph at the beginning of the report, they had looked at that issue and found that there weren't any real differences. But it is something that we want to do now, is to go through the indicators and where we can look at the urban-rural differences, and we'll be able to do that with the attitudinal data within the survey. So that's what to do next.
And just one further point, it's really just to note, I think it would be good to look at the inclusion of women's opinions within the survey in particular, given that children and young people are a separate issue.
Yep.
I note that one of the headings is safe community, but I think the reality is there's no such thing as a safe space for women, really, when you look at the fact that there's 13,000 and 14,000 incidents of violence against women every year, which is a hell of a lot more than all the other hate crimes, as I would put it.
Well, we did look at differences between genders, and for the most there aren't many differences, but there are some. For instance, females tend to have a more favourable attitudes towards minority ethnic people and things like that. I mean, I could provide you with more information on that if that would be helpful. But yeah, we've provided a breakdown with. Now, it's not within this report; it's within the accompanying tables on the website. For as many of the indicators as we can.
Thanks.
Yep. Okay. Gordon Lyons.
Thanks, Chairman. Thanks very much for coming to the committee today. very disturbing statistic is obviously in around racial crimes. Is that one of the ones that you're saying that it's good in a way because you think it's an increase in the number of people reporting?
Well, that's really, I suppose, our interpretation, just scratching the surface again. That's one that I think we need to look into in more detail. I don't know whether the racial equality strategy would...
Well, certainly it is an issue that is concerning, and the figures have gone up. Whether, as you say, it's an issue of, as the Chair said, it's an issue of more people reporting it, or more people, or more crimes. It certainly is something that we would be wanting to take into account as we move forward into the racial equality strategy and into the delivery of a refugee integration strategy. So certainly it would be at the forefront of our mind.
I think, though, although it is disturbing that it has gone up as much as it has, if more people are reporting it, that's obviously a good thing. But it's just to take on Ms. Fearon's point, it's obviously good just to obviously keep in mind that, as the note there says, that violent crimes and crimes due to domestic abuse are much larger. Obviously, we don't want to see any crimes, and obviously, when it's happening to you, you're not concerned with the statistics. But I think it is. We need to keep that in mind as well. But hopefully, more people are reporting those crimes. Just a question in around your confidence in regards to these figures. You're obviously taking them from a number of different sources. These are obviously from different surveys. Are you confident in the sample sizes of these? Because obviously if they're very small sample sizes, over a period of time, any fluctuations that you may have might not count for much if the sample size... Do you have confidence in all of your sources to deal with potential problems that might come from that?
Yeah, at a Northern Ireland level, certainly we would. I wouldn't be confident in breaking down to, say, district council level or anything like that. We wouldn't want to say anything, but breaking it down by gender or religion or urban-rural.
You think it would be very difficult to get into that sort of detail, and that's when your samples start to become...
We could look at those characteristics I've mentioned, but going down any further than that, I wouldn't be happy. But I think this is where the link to programmes and projects that are going on the ground is helpful, because this is really a strategic framework for Together Building a United Community, and you're working with projects and programmes on the ground to identify what their own impacts and outcomes will be that are more relevant at that level, and they have to indicate to us as well how these link up to the higher level strategic outcomes. So
if then you're if you have confidence in these samples, there's obviously a statistically significant difference between the percentage of Protestants and the percentage of Roman Catholics who would say that they think that their cultural identity is respected by society, 73% to 61%. Is that concerning to you? And what do you think can be done to help increase the confidence that people have that their cultural views or religious views or whatever else is being respected?
Well, I suppose one of the ways that we're taking this, and it runs throughout TBOC, there are a number of different programmes where we're looking at respect for cultural identity, and bringing young people together, particularly in terms of the United Youth programme and also in summer camps, where we're helping young people to learn about each other's identity. And to see past, I suppose, past their initial impressions. So that we would do that within United Community. We're doing that within summer camps. Within Urban Villages programmes, one of the key elements of that will be about cultural identity as well, and about creating confidence within communities of their own cultural identity. So creating respect for cultural identity runs throughout TBOC.
And just one more question, Mr. Chairman. I know you had said that you haven't had time to properly, I suppose, have any definitive analysis of how TBOC is operating, but I actually met somebody the other day who is a young person. He's 15 years old and he's involved in a programme. He's from my constituency, but it's one that's based in Ballymena. Are you getting any indication, or do you have any sort of feedback on any of those programmes yet, or anything that you can give us about how those are going?
Donna, do you want to talk about the summer
Well,
camp?
yeah, just on summer camps, so they're underway at the moment, even though they're called summer, but it's the idea is about prolonged engagement between the young people. So one of the most powerful elements of the feedback has been the comments from the young people themselves who participated. And so the quotes, and we've been using these in presentations and things like quotes, I didn't know, things like I didn't know they were different from us. When we meet people from a different community, we're all interested in the same things and we all want to do the same things. So we've just completed a series of engagement with young participants in the summer camp programme, and we'll use their feedback to inform how we go forward in the future programme. But we will also have more quantitative and qualitative data at the end of the programme. So we carry out moderation visits at all the summer camps in conjunction with the Education Authority, who are our partners. And there will be formal feedback on measurement against all of the outcomes. So, for example, under cultural expression, a measure of success of the camp will be that the young people participating have a better understanding, respect for cultural differences.
Okay.
But it's what the young people say to us is the most powerful.
Okay. Then just on that, can you give us even a ballpark figure of how many people are currently involved in that, and when do you think we'd have those figures or that analysis?
We hope to put over 4,000 people through the programme. I think the initial number was 4,700, but you get some drop-off. We have commissioned a formal evaluation of the programme in addition to what
That's 4,000 currently?
Yes, for 2015. We've commissioned a formal evaluation in addition to what the EA, as our partner, tells us and what we gather ourselves through a strategic investment board. They will produce an interim report at the end of November and a final report in January.
So we should have some indications of
Oh,
that detail. Okay, that's great. That's very helpful. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Deputy Chair, Chris Little.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for your presentation. It's helpful to start getting into some of the data around these issues to assess whether the interventions are making a difference or not. The indicator I want to raise is 2.2 B. It says 2.2C. It says that 18% of applications to post-primary integrated schools did not result in admission in 2014-15. May not have had time to assess this just yet, but the annual data there suggests that around 2008-2009 that it was as high over 20%. And that had decreased in 2013-14 to around 10%. There seems to have been a spike really in the last year where it's back up again towards 18%. Has there been any assessment as to why that might have been the case?
Well, we spoke to the Department of Education about that, and the response they gave us, obviously they understand a lot more about how all of this works than we do, and what they said was that because integrated schools tend to be spread out with little or no alternative provision within reasonable travelling distance, it's possible that schools have to refuse first preference applications to stay within their enrolment number. And school criteria also has a role to play. First preference applicants can and do get bumped out as the process goes through, with second and third preferences suiting the criteria better. So, for example, if a school has siblings within their criteria, it might exclude those children who put the school at first preference but are an only or eldest child. And they just said there's a number of permutations all around that I suppose can lead to spikes and drops within it.
I think it's helpful to have that indicator in the good relations indicators. It was included as a result of strong consultation responses, then it should be there. I welcome its inclusion. No, I don't think it does, so I'll not ask it in that way to try and be difficult, but Together Build a United Community doesn't make much mention of integrated education. So I'm just wondering how that, in what way that data will be utilised either by Build a United Community or the Department of Education. Have we got to that point yet? Do you have any intentions of endeavouring to influence how Building United Community or the Department of Education responds, given that you thought it merited inclusion in the indicators?
I think in terms of like what I've said about previous indicators, I think we need to, on this particular one, to try and drill down, to try and get, you know, beneath the headline to see what precisely is the reason for this. You know, we've said, and it says in this report, that preference for integrated education is an important indicator of attitudes towards other communities. So for that, you know, for that sake alone, it's important that it's in there. You know, within TBUC, there is a commitment in terms of shared education campuses, and we're also taking forward the programmes with Atlantic Philanthropies in terms of increasing sharing among schools. So, I mean, that is important, but the indicators itself, as an indicator of attitudes, is important. So I think for that reason, you know, there's a good valid reason for it to be in there.
Yeah, and obviously the agreement and education legislation thereafter commits the signatories to encourage and facilitate integrated education in mixed neighbourhoods. It's my understanding that a post-primary integrated school in South East Belfast region was 100% oversubscribed last year, so there clearly are some major issues in that respect. And indeed the data shows there, despite that commitment of the agreement, it's 6.97%, pretty steady pupils in integrated education then, yeah. Okay. I don't think the data's necessarily cover this, but my understanding is that social housing is around 90% single identity, and interestingly, or concerningly perhaps, the indicators show that 71% of 668 people who presented as homeless in last year did so as a result of paramilitary intimidation. How will that type of data inform Building United Community actions or any other type of government action?
I mean, I think it is, as you rightly say, it's very concerning, like a very concerning indicator and very concerning data from all of this. In terms of reducing, again, the indicator represents people's fears about safety, as well as allowing us to measure the prevalence of intimidation. 472 people presenting as homeless because of intimidation would concern anyone. I think the work that we're doing and the work that has been taken forward within TBUC in relation to developing communities and trying to build communities, particularly within urban villages, and all of the work that we're doing is designed to try and address this, but it's certainly not going to be solved quickly, and it's a problem that's going to be, you know, take an element of time to resolve, but we continue to work on it.
I mean, is that, I presume that obviously pertains largely to social housing, so is that something that is raised with the Department for Social Development, for example, in order to see what way they intend to respond?
Absolutely, we have regular discussions with the Department for Social Development, but you would know whether or not the data relates purely to social housing, or is it?
Yeah, my understanding is it relates.
I don't mean, I should be clear, I don't mean intimidation applies only in a social housing context, but the data would be available more in the social housing context, given the application processes, etc. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and obviously people have said the hate crime, racially motivated hate crime incidents are of concern as well. That's something that I'll give more attention to. I think some pretty startling data in there that needs action that Building a United Community doesn't set out to take at this moment in time. So there's work to be done there. But appreciate the presentation. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Alfred.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, and thank you for this information. Information is power, and without it, we can't move forward. And it does give us a good sense of ourselves. But I want to keep on to the indicator that Chris was on with regards to the integrated schools, indicator 2.2c. I would put it to you that this will basically tell us nothing, or we won't be able to use this data if we only purely look at the post-primary integrated schools. Because whilst you can see a trend, you can measure a trend per year, how do you know that first preference applications to post-primary schools haven't mirrored those trends? And if they have, then it's nothing really to do with the integrated education sector. It's just been demographics.
Which is why I said we need to, drill down beyond this headline action to see and to consult more in more detail with the Department of Education to see precisely what the causes of this are, because there are a whole number of factors that come into play.
Yeah, because you could have a controlled school, you could have a maintained school, individual schools, and they would have the same complaint that a lot of their first preference didn't get in because of oversubscription, because they're a successful school, and because they want more numbers, and the Department of Education won't give them more numbers, and it's simply down to that. So whilst I can understand why we're looking at the integrated sector, pure data on solely integrated schools won't tell us any picture until we have the collective.
I agree.
You understand? Can I go back to our page 100, which is the very useful timeline which the Chair alluded to earlier with regards to the landmark timeline? I found this intriguing because what you're not doing is, and it's not criticism, but what you're not doing is measuring where we are. What you're actually doing here is measuring people's perception of progress, because it's a percentage of who think the relations between Protestants and Catholics are better than they were 5 years ago. So it's not saying whether relations are good. It's saying, are they better than 5 years ago? So you're measuring progress or lack of progress. You're not measuring where we are. Is there a reason for that?
This has been collected for quite a number of years, and it is seen as a measure, I suppose, of optimism or.
It's not a criticism.
Yeah.
But I see there's merit and goodness in it, more so than just maybe even saying this is where we are.
Yeah, I guess it's being able to get a feel for how things are progressing. I mean, there are other questions as well, and you'll see it in one of the other indicators, which ask about how favourable young people feel towards Protestants or Catholics and minority ethnic people, which does give you more of a feel for how they currently feel in terms of their attitudes. So I guess it's trying to pull those two together and make sense of it.
I'm going to ask a really unfair question. Is there any data, has the questions ever been asked pre-Troubles?
Not that I'm aware of, no. Not that I'm aware
Because
of.
it would be interesting to see, because you hear the stories, Chair. You hear the stories about dances in orange halls and all sorts of...
Maybe you could tell us from your experience.
No, I was...
Pre-Troubles.
Far too young.
That's right.
I mean, like a few hundred years ago? Or?
Far too young. But you hear these stories about everybody celebrating everyone's culture, all of that pre-Troubles. And then when the Troubles came, everybody just had to go into a defence mechanism with regards to their own communities. Now, it's probably too simplistic, of course, but it would be useful. Again, I know it's not your responsibility, but it would be useful to see if there was any sort of, even census data over a stretch of 10 years, to see exactly how far we hit, how low we hit with regards to community relations, and how far we've come, probably, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But of course that's not for you today.
Paul still remembers singing the national anthem at the end of the cinema, and that right? And everybody stood up.
Hey, I do.
Something that's really dear to my heart, and I'm really surprised and disappointed in the figure, not your fault of course, is page 106 in us, which is indicator 1.2a, sport. Sport is the key for so much, should be the key for so much success in this country, in every community, and every single young person in this country. And a percentage of young people who regularly socialise or play sport with people with a different religious community. And sometimes I'm thinking, when I look at that at first, I'm saying, well, why should it matter? Why should it matter that a young person knows the other person's religion when they socialise or they play football? That's the first thing. But we live where we live, Northern Ireland, so here we are. But I find that very disappointing, that 63% of young people report regularly socialising or playing sport with people from a different community. Because I have two boys and a girl, and my two boys are steeped in football. And they've also been involved in groups like Coaching for Christ, where the gospel message is preached to young people on a football team. And it's a way of getting in and staying in and influencing young minds. And I think there's so much opportunity in sport that we haven't picked up on yet. And it's the way in to young people.
Currently in TBUC, we have the Cross Community Sports Programme, which is taken forward by DCAL. And they have, done some excellent work in terms of bringing forward that programme this year. Sport has also been a component of the summer camps as well. And certainly we see, the benefits and the potential for sport to be, a unifying factor for young people who, as you say, a lot of young people, very high percentage of young people are very interested in sport. So there's been a lot of work done in relation to sport, to use sport as a vehicle to bring young people together, and not necessarily to make young people all the same, but to help them to respect difference and see difference and enjoy, other sports that they may not traditionally have engaged with.
I was disappointed at 63%. I thought it should have been higher. And then you ask yourself, well, why is that? Have you any reasons why you think it's so low?
Well, again, we need to go back and see why this is what young people have said. These are the percentages. We need to dig deeper and say, well, why is that? And particularly ask those young people who don't socialise or play sport with people from a different community, why is that? Is it in terms of access? Is it in terms of perception? Is it a lack of knowledge? Is it peer pressure from within their own communities? So we need to dig deeper into that.
I suppose this is one of my next question, is this: what is seen as playing regularly with people from a different community? Because most of the youth teams, in fact all of the youth teams in Northampton, are mixed. For a start. So you don't have this team from a certain tradition or community. So they're all mixed. But if you did have, and adult teams, there is that identification between one sector or another. But they will still play or oppose with or compete against teams from the opposite. So that's still playing.
Yeah.
That's still playing sport.
So it depends on how this particular question was framed. Would you have?
Yeah, I can't remember off the top of my head how they defined regularly, whether that was once a week or once. I just can't remember, but I could let you know.
Well, if you play, let's say, for instance, football, I'm sure it's the same as hockey. You're training 2 nights a week, playing on a Saturday or whatever. So that's real contact. That's good contact throughout the week, every week. I've looked at this and I've thought about this, and I'm really disappointed and disheartened, but would it be as simple as not every young person plays sport?
Could be.
So there's no chance of any connection there or interaction?
But, although the question asks, or
Social,
it talks about how socialise or play sport.
Yeah. But you would. I can see where young people would have more opportunity to play sport, to go and play sport and then interact, rather than somebody just going to the street corner, or somebody going to the local youth club, or somebody going because of the demographics and population centres. Socialising isn't the same as travelling to play an away match somewhere. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
One thing I've thought about too, and I'm not going to be hard on any sport, because I admire every single sport for the athleticism and fitness and everything else that they bring, and there's no doubt about it. See, when you are on a field of play, I believe you can learn anything in life, everything about life, on a football pitch or a sports field. But has GAA had a bearing here?
I honestly couldn't answer that because, again, I haven't, drilled down into the data on this here.
Because obviously that would be seen more as a predominantly one-sided sport rather than most other sports. And that's not been hard on them, it's just where we are. And I'm wondering, has that had a bearing?
Well, we've commissioned some research through University of Ulster and on social exclusion in sport and the reason for why people may not feel comfortable about participating in sport for all sorts of reasons, and that will be launched in December, so we should have some more information to the background of these sorts of things.
Right, okay.
I suppose just one other thing to add is that certainly it's shown in the Young Life and Time survey that it's really males who tend to be reporting that they're participating rather than females, so that might explain some of the reason. And it did come through, certainly in initial findings from the research that Donna had mentioned, that females just don't participate as much as males do for a whole variety of reasons.
Understand, which has, if I had my way, I'd have everybody running about a field. Just another thing, all the indicators are all about, they're all direct questions about difference and about relations between one to the other. With regards to your timeline and your progress, are social economic factors a consideration? Is there anything that jumps out at you to say downturn in trade, recession, and has that had an effect? Is there a sense out there of we're all in this together collectively when it's hardship, or is it a case of those ones are getting recovery better than us? Is social economic factors taken into consideration and has had an effect?
I'm certain that social and economic factors would, affects every aspect of life and certainly would affect people's optimism. And when times are hard, perhaps people look in all sorts of areas to see, to look for, to try and identify what has caused their problems. So, yeah, absolutely. I think social and economic factors have an effect. And when people are working, when people are feeling good economically, when people are feeling optimistic, there's perhaps more confidence. You create more confident communities. And again, as part of the urban villages element of TBOC, one of the things we wanted to try and do is to create more confident, more outward-looking communities that are confident in themselves, communities that look good, communities where the infrastructure is good, communities where the built and capital environment is good. So I do think, yeah, absolutely.
Close to what Megan asked earlier about rural and urban, we know that even in urban and rural, there are pockets of success whereby community groups and business leaders throughout the Troubles work really, really hard to stop their community falling into the trap of paramilitarism. Does your survey take into account that? I know you have a certain population base to record data, but are we sure that we're getting every sphere? Because a village in one area could have a far better record of community relations than a village 10 miles down the road, even if they were of the same faith.
Yeah. I suppose, well, the survey is representative of areas across Northern Ireland, but it wouldn't be able to be representative of every village and small area right across. I mean, it is when you sort of think of east, west, north, south, but that it can't sort of pick everyone from small areas. So, I couldn't say that it does.
But you're confident that the data collected has been of a good spread, ticking all boxes, urban, rural, class, eco, social, everything.
Yeah. I mean, that's not to say that if you ask these questions in a smaller area or an interface area, that you would get different answers, undoubtedly.
Okay, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. I think that's just about it. But I think maybe one of the ones that impresses me, and not in a good way, is the percentage of people who feel they don't have any real influence on decision making. And that probably speaks to all of us on this hill. And I shall just park that there and let it float. Donna, Grania and Pauline, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
What indicated that, Chair?
That's 4.1b.
4.1b.
Yeah, I seen that too. Chair, I wouldn't be so hard on yourself because it's talking about.
Your fault.
Mea culpa. Get it in the notes. Get it in the notes. No, I'm not going to get on my little hobby horse at 10 to 4 on a Wednesday afternoon, but I do think power off the hill would do no harm. I think it's an interesting set of statistics. The question is what the department does with it,
Yeah.
and how they drill down to understand why things change. And Paul, you focused on the sporting one, which I think is a good one. 2 dips in the last couple of years. Why?
Yeah.
Why dips? What was it? Was it an event or?
Useful to have that information separately because playing sport and socialising lumped in together. Interesting to see what that would be separate.
I mean, we had very good. Well, I thought I thought it was compelling evidence. We were looking at T-Buck from an academic at Ulster University who said, sometimes we bring people together because they're different, and that's what we say to them. You're either side of a peace wall, so you have to come together because you're different. And he said, no, the way to do it is identify similarities. So you go to people and say, do you want to be better parents? Because we're running parenting classes.
Yeah.
And they come together on that basis. And he said, like the flag protest had a shockwave, and for a couple of weeks people didn't come. But at the end of the day, they said, well, actually, this programme's too important to me.
Common aim. Yep.
And they came back in. So, was it an event?
And you hit a point there because when you do that, it becomes a natural thing instead of an artificial thing.
Exactly.
And that makes all the difference. Absolutely.
Integration can't be a forced thing.
No.
So can segregation. That way. So can segregation.
Okay.
No.
Chair, I still don't think we're quite at the place where we're collecting data that really gets to the hub of things, but maybe we're making some progress in the right direction. But I think you're absolutely right. It's what happens with this. Not a whole lot of point in collecting it unless it is informing, actions, with time measured outcomes.
Yeah, I mean, it is just a collation from the likes of the Young Life and Times, Police, Housing Executive. So, I mean, it looks, each bit in its own right's probably quite robust at the level that they were endorsing it. Okay, members, any other business for today? If not, we shall adjourn until 2 o'clock next Wednesday here in room 30. Thank you.